At 2:47 a.m. on a bitter February night, ER nurse Naomi Vale made a decision that would turn her into either a hero or a criminal. She just didn't know which yet. When a battered young woman walked through those sliding doors with her smiling abuser close behind, Naomi finally snapped. She broke every rule, called him out in front of everyone, and waited to be fired. Instead, a wounded stranger in the waiting room heard everything. His name was Damian Crow, and he would change her life forever. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. Mos. The fluorescent lights in St. Catherine's emergency room hummed like dying insects, casting everything in that particular shade of institutional white that made even healthy people look half dead. Naomi Vale had stopped noticing it years ago, the same way she'd stopped noticing the permanent coffee stain on her scrubs, or the way her lower back ached after hour 6 of a 12-hour shift. Some things you just learned to live with when you worked nights in a Brooklyn ER. What she hadn't learned to live with, what she would never learn to live with, was the lies. I fell down the stairs. Naomi's hands paused over the intake form, pen hovering above the checkbox marked accidental injury. She'd heard that one before. Heard it so many times she could recite the variations in her sleep. Fell down the stairs, walked into a door, tripped over the dog, slipped in the shower. The creativity of domestic violence victims when it came to explaining away broken bones and black eyes would have been impressive if it wasn't so goddamn heartbreaking. She looked up at the young woman sitting on the exam table in Bay 7, early 20s maybe. Blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail that had probably started the evening neat, but now hung limp and askew. Left eye swollen nearly shut, already turning that deep purple that would fade to yellow-green over the next week. Split lip, fingerprint bruises around her throat like a necklace of violence. And her wrist. Naomi had seen enough fractures to recognize the angle wasn't right. "Elise, is it?" Naomi kept her voice gentle, the same tone she used with frightened children. The young woman nodded, then winced at the movement. "Elise Harper," she whispered. Her good eye darted toward the waiting room, visible through the gap in the curtain. "My boyfriend's out there, Marcus. He's been really worried." "I bet he has," Naomi thought, but didn't say. Instead, she wrote down the name with more force than necessary, the pen digging into the paper. Marcus. She'd remember that. "These stairs you fell down," Naomi said, still writing. "Were they at home?" "Yeah, I was carrying laundry. Wasn't watching where I was going." The lie came smooth, practiced. This wasn't Elise's first time in an ER. Naomi would bet money on it. Just her first time at St. Catherine's. Uh-huh. Naomi set down the pen and moved closer, gently taking Elise's injured wrist to examine it. The girl flinched at the touch, and something hot and sharp twisted in Naomi's chest. 12 years she'd been a nurse. 12 years of patching up broken women and sending them back to the men who broke them. And she was so tired of it, so incredibly tired. "Elise, look at me." The girl met her eyes, and Naomi saw it all there. The fear, the shame, the desperate hope that maybe this time someone would see through the lie and throw her a lifeline. But underneath all of that was something else, something that made Naomi's stomach turn: resignation. Elise had already accepted that no one would help her. She'd walk out of here tonight with a cast on her wrist and go right back to the man who put her here. "You don't have to," Naomi started, but a movement in the waiting room caught her eye. Through the gap in the curtain, she could see him. Marcus. Mid-30s, wearing an expensive-looking jacket and the kind of confident smirk that made Naomi want to break things. He was talking to the admissions nurse, leaning against the desk like he owned the place, gesturing with his hands as he spun whatever story he'd concocted to match Elise's lie about stairs. And the admissions nurse, Sandra, who had 3 kids and had worked at St. Catherine's for 20 years, was nodding along sympathetically, buying it completely, or pretending to buy it because it was easier than dealing with the truth. "He really does love me," Elise said quietly, desperately. Sometimes he gets stressed. Work's been hard, and I shouldn't have— Don't!" The word came out sharper than Naomi intended. She took a breath, forced her voice back to something resembling professional. "Don't tell me what you shouldn't have done. You didn't do this to yourself." Elise's eye filled with tears. "You don't understand. If I say anything, he'll He'll what? Naomi asked, though she already knew the answer. He'd make it worse. He always made it worse. That's how men like Marcus worked. That's how they kept their victims silent and compliant and coming back for more. Before Elise could answer, the curtain yanked open. Marcus stood there, all concerned boyfriend energy and false charm. Hey, baby, how you doing? Nurse says it's probably fractured. He looked at Naomi, and his smile didn't reach his eyes. Thanks for taking care of my girl. She's so clumsy sometimes. Naomi's hands curled into fists at her sides. Sir, you need to wait in the lobby. This is a restricted area. I just want to be here for her. Marcus moved to Elise's side, placed a hand on her shoulder that looked gentle, but made Elise tense like a rabbit under a hawk's shadow. We're a team, you know? Through thick and thin. Through stares and fists, Naomi thought. She looked at Elise, who wouldn't meet her eyes anymore, and felt something inside her crack. Not break, it had broken years ago, piece by piece with every woman she'd failed to save. This was different. This was the sound of whatever had been holding her back finally shattering completely. Get out, Naomi said. Marcus blinked. Excuse me? I said get out. You're not welcome in this exam area. Look, lady, I don't know what you think. I think you put your hands on this woman. I think you fractured her wrist, gave her a concussion, and strangled her hard enough to leave marks that'll take 2 weeks to fade. Naomi's voice rose, and she didn't try to stop it. I think you're a coward who hits women, and I think you need to get the hell out of my ER before I call security. The entire emergency room had gone silent. Naomi could feel eyes on her from every direction. Other nurses, the few patients in the waiting room, Dr. Patterson emerging from his office with a concerned expression. She knew she was ending her career, knew she was violating about 15 different protocols. Didn't care. Marcus's face had gone red. You can't talk to me like that. I'll have your job. Get in line. Naomi. Dr. Patterson was at her elbow now, his voice low and urgent. My office. Now. But Naomi wasn't done. She stepped closer to Marcus, close enough to see the rage simmering in his eyes. You think you're untouchable? You think because she's scared and alone that you can do whatever you want? I've seen 100 men like you. You're nothing special. You're just another insecure little boy who can only feel big when he's hurting someone smaller. Babe, don't, Elise whispered, tears streaming down her face now. Please, just let it go. Marcus grabbed Elise's good arm, pulled her off the exam table hard enough to make her cry out. We're leaving. I'll be filing a complaint about this insane. Take your hands off her. The voice came from behind them, from the waiting room. It wasn't loud, but something in the tone made everyone freeze. Naomi turned. There was a man sitting in one of the plastic chairs against the wall, partially hidden in shadow. She hadn't noticed him before. Must have checked in while she was with another patient. He stood now, moving with the kind of careful control that suggested movement hurt him, and stepped into the light. Damian Crowe didn't look like much at first glance. Mid-30s, dark hair, decent suit that had seen better days, but there was something in his eyes, something cold and measuring and infinitely dangerous, that made Marcus's hand drop from Elise's arm like he'd been burned. This doesn't concern you, Marcus said, but his voice had lost its confidence. You're wrong about that. Damian took another step forward, and Naomi saw the way he moved, favoring his left side. There was blood on his shirt, visible now that he was closer. Not a lot, but enough. See, I've been sitting here for the last 40 minutes listening to you rehearse your story. About the stairs, about how clumsy your girlfriend is, about how you're such a caring, devoted partner. He smiled, and it was the most unsettling thing Naomi had seen all night. You're not very good at lying. Who the hell are you? Someone who's had a very long night, someone who's not in the mood for this particular brand of garbage. Damian's eyes shifted to Elise. You want to leave with him? Elise looked between them, her face pale. Think carefully, Damian said. Because if you walk out that door with him tonight, he's going to make you pay for this scene. You know it. I know it. Everyone in this room knows it, except maybe the good doctor over there who's pretending this is all some big misunderstanding. Dr. Patterson cleared his throat. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to shut up. Damian didn't even look at him. His focus was entirely on Elise. Last chance. You want help, or you want to go home and count how many bones he breaks before morning? Marcus lunged at Damien. It was stupid and impulsive and exactly what Damien had been waiting for. He sidestepped, gracefully, despite his injury, and used Marcus's momentum against him, sending the man crashing into the wall hard enough to leave a dent in the drywall. Before Marcus could recover, Damien had him by the back of the neck, face first against the concrete block. "Here's what's going to happen," Damien said conversationally, like he was discussing the weather and not grinding a man's face into a wall. "You're going to walk out of here. You're going to get in your car. And you're going to drive far away from this hospital and never come near Elise Harper again. Understand?" "Fuck you," Marcus spat. "Wrong answer." Damien did something with his hand. Naomi couldn't see exactly what, and Marcus screamed. "Let's try again. Do you understand?" "Yes, yes, goddammit." "Good." Damien released him, and Marcus stumbled away, clutching his arm. "Oh, and Marcus? If I hear you've gone near her, if I even hear you've thought about her, you'll wish this was the worst night of your life. Trust me on that." Marcus ran. Actually ran, shoving past Dr. Patterson and Sandra and anyone else in his way. The automatic doors slid open and he disappeared into the February darkness. And just like that, it was over. The ER stayed silent for a long moment. Then Damien turned to Elise, and his entire demeanor changed. The cold danger vanished, replaced by something almost gentle. "You'll be safe here tonight. They'll fix your wrist, make sure you don't have a concussion. Tomorrow you'll want to talk to someone about getting a restraining order. It won't stop him, but it's a start." He pulled out a card. Somehow, despite everything, he had a business card, and handed it to Naomi. "If he comes back, call this number. Someone will handle it." Then he walked back to his chair in the waiting room and sat down like nothing had happened. Naomi looked at the card. No name, just a phone number embossed in black on cream-colored stock. She looked back at Damien, who had his eyes closed now, one hand pressed to his ribs where the blood stain was spreading. "Someone should see to you," Naomi said. "Eventually." He didn't open his eyes. "Help her first." Dr. Patterson found his voice. "Naomi, we need to talk about—" "Later." Naomi turned to Elise, who was crying openly now, her whole body shaking. "Come on, honey. Let's get you taken care of." It took 3 hours to set Elise's wrist, run a CT scan to rule out brain bleeding, document her injuries, and convince her to let them call a social worker. By the time Naomi finally had a chance to breathe, it was almost 6 in the morning. The night shift was ending, the day crew filtering in with their coffee and their small talk about kids and weekend plans. Naomi walked back out to the waiting room. Damien was still there, though he'd finally let one of the other nurses look at him. Knife wound, shallow but nasty, along his ribs. Could have been worse. Judging by the way he'd handled Marcus, it probably should have been worse. "You're still here," she said. "Waiting's my favorite part of hospitals." He stood, moving easier now that they'd cleaned and bandaged him. "How is she?" "Stable, scared. The social worker's with her now." "Good." He started toward the exit, then paused. "You did a brave thing tonight. Stupid, but brave." "Funny. I was about to say the same to you." He almost smiled. "I have a feeling we'll see each other again, Naomi Vale." He knew her name. She shouldn't have been surprised. It was on her badge. But something about the way he said it made her skin prickle. "How did you get stabbed?" "Long story. Wrong place, wrong time. The usual." "That's not usual for most people." "No," Damien agreed. "I suppose it isn't." He walked out into the gray pre-dawn light, and Naomi watched him go. She looked down at the card still in her pocket, ran her thumb over the embossed numbers. She should throw it away, should forget this whole night happened, should go back to keeping her head down and following the rules and not getting involved. She put the card in her wallet instead. 3 days later, Marcus Chen was arrested for assault. Naomi heard about it from Elise, who called the hospital asking to speak with her specifically. The police had found security footage from a bar where Marcus had gotten in a fight the same night Elise was injured. Multiple witnesses, clear evidence. He'd be doing time. "It's weird, though," Elise said on the phone, her voice stronger than it had been in the ER. "The bar's owner said someone came by that morning and asked specifically about Marcus, about whether there were cameras, about whether anyone had seen anything. The owner said the guy paid him $5,000 for the footage." Naomi's hand tightened on the phone. "Did he say what this guy looked like?" No, just that he was polite, professional, and that he seemed like someone you didn't want to disappoint. After they hung up, Naomi sat in the break room staring at nothing. She pulled out the card, looked at the number. She shouldn't call. Whatever Damien Crowe was involved in, and she was increasingly certain she knew exactly what kind of man he was, she wanted no part of it. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Naomi Vale. That voice, smooth and certain. Damien. I hope I'm not calling at a bad time. How did you get this number? Does it matter? I wanted to check in. Make sure you didn't face too much fallout from the other night. I got written up. Formal reprimand. One more incident and I'm fired. Naomi kept her voice flat. Did you pay for that security footage? I don't know what you're talking about. Right, because concerned citizens just happened to show up with $5,000 the morning after witnessing domestic violence. Silence on the line. Then, he would have hurt her again. You know that. The system doesn't protect women like Elise. It fails them over and over until they end up dead in a ditch somewhere or disappear into a life so small and scared they might as well be dead. So you took it upon yourself to fix it. Someone has to. Naomi should hang up, should block this number and burn that card and forget Damien Crowe existed. Instead, she said, "What are you?" A concerned citizen with resources. That's not an answer. It's the one you're going to get. She could hear him moving, the rustle of fabric. I'm calling because I have a proposition for you. I'm not interested in how many women like Elise do you see in a month? 5, 10, 20? Naomi closed her eyes. Too many. And how many of them do you actually help? How many walk out of that ER and into a better life instead of right back into hell? That's not fair. Life isn't fair, but we can be. Damien's voice dropped lower. I can make men like Marcus disappear. Not kill them. I'm not a monster, whatever you might think, but I can make them go away. Make them face consequences. Make them understand that there are still some lines you don't cross without paying for it. You're talking about vigilante justice. I'm talking about actual justice, the kind that works, the kind that saves lives. Naomi's hands were shaking. Why me? Because you broke protocol for a stranger. Because you risked your career to call out an abuser in front of everyone. Because I think you're as tired as I am of watching evil people win. I'm a nurse. I save lives. I don't... You save lives by patching up wounds. I'm asking you to save them by preventing the wounds in the first place. Damien paused. Think about it. When you see the next Elise, the next broken girl with a story about stairs or doors or her own clumsiness, you could just document it and send her home. Or you could give me a name. And what? You'd make him disappear? I'd make sure he never hurt anyone again, one way or another. It was insane. Criminal. Everything Naomi had become a nurse to prevent. She believed in helping people, in healing, in doing no harm. But she also believed in protecting the innocent. And sometimes, more often than anyone wanted to admit, those two beliefs came into direct conflict. I need to think about it, she said. Fair enough. You have my number. He hung up, and Naomi sat in the break room until her shift started, turning the conversation over in her mind. She thought about Elise, who was safe now because someone had stepped outside the law. She thought about all the women who came before Elise, the ones she'd documented and medicated and sent back to their abusers because that was the protocol. That was the system. She thought about the system and how utterly it had failed. 2 weeks passed. Naomi tried to forget about Damien Crowe and his offer. She went to work, she came home, she watched television, and pretended her life was normal. Pretended she didn't see the face of every abuser she'd ever encountered in her dreams. Then came the night that changed everything. Her name was Sophie Monroe, and she was 19 years old. She came in around midnight with a ruptured spleen, internal bleeding, and the kind of injuries that spoke to prolonged, systematic torture. Her boyfriend, a man named Derek Voss, who worked in finance and lived in a high-rise in downtown Brooklyn, had beaten her so badly it was a miracle she was alive. Naomi worked on her for 6 hours. They managed to stabilize her, stop the bleeding, but the damage was done. Sophie would recover physically, maybe. Mentally? That was another question entirely. He'll kill me if I press charges, Sophie whispered while Naomi was checking her vitals at the end of the shift. His family has money. Lawyers, I can't fight that. You can try. I did try. Sophie's laugh was broken, bitter. I filed a report 3 months ago. Nothing happened. His father knows people. It went away. Naomi thought about the card in her wallet. Thought about Damien's words. Think about it. When you see the next Elise, what if I told you there was another option? Naomi heard herself say. Not the police, not the courts, but someone who could make sure Derek never hurt you again. Sophie's eyes sharpened. What kind of someone? The kind who doesn't play by the rules. You mean like, what, a hitman? No, not that. Just someone who handles problems the system can't fix. For a long moment, Sophie just stared at her. Then quietly, do it. Naomi pulled out her phone with shaking hands. She'd memorized the number by now, though she'd never admitted that to herself. It rang 3 times before Damien picked up. I was wondering when you'd call, he said. I have a name for you, Naomi said. Derek Voss. He put his girlfriend in the ICU tonight. She's 19 years old and she's terrified to press charges because his family will bury her. Address? She gave it to him, along with everything else she knew about Derek Voss. His work schedule, his habits, the make and model of his car. Things she shouldn't know, details she'd pieced together from Sophie's frightened whispers and her own digging through social media. Consider it handled, Damien said. How's the girl? She'll live, physically. Then we'll make sure she has a reason to want to. 3 days later, Derek Voss was arrested for tax evasion, fraud, and possession of cocaine with intent to distribute. The evidence had apparently been found during a random audit, random being a very generous word for what had clearly been a targeted investigation. His father's lawyers couldn't make it disappear. The charges stuck. Sophie called Naomi, crying. I don't know how you did it, but thank you. Thank you. Naomi didn't know how to respond to that, didn't know how to process what she'd done. So she just said, be safe, and hung up. That night, Damien called. You did good. I broke the law. You saved a life. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. No, Damien agreed. They're not. Welcome to the gray area, Naomi. It's not as comfortable as you'd like, but it's where the real work happens. What now? Now you keep being a nurse, keep doing your job, and when you see someone who needs help the system can't provide, you call me. Should have ended there. Should have been a one-time thing, an aberration born of desperation and rage, and too many years watching victims suffer. But it didn't end, because 2 weeks later there was another name, and then another. Before Naomi fully understood what was happening, she'd become part of something much larger than herself, something dangerous and illegal and absolutely necessary. She'd become part of Damien Crow's war on the men who hurt women, and there was no going back. The thing about crossing a moral line is that the first step is always the hardest. After that, it gets easier. Not because the acts themselves become less wrong, but because you've already broken the seal. You've already stepped into the darkness. Might as well keep walking. Over the next month, Naomi gave Damien 7 names, 7 men who'd put women in her ER with injuries that made her sick to look at. 7 abusers who thought money or charm or connections made them untouchable. They all fell. Some got arrested. Some left town in the middle of the night and didn't come back. One, a particularly nasty piece of work named Ryan Castellano, who'd hospitalized 3 different girlfriends in the past year, simply vanished. Naomi didn't ask what happened to him. Damien had said he didn't kill people, and she chose to believe that. Had to believe that, because the alternative was admitting she might be complicit in murder. The women, though. The women were safe. That was what mattered. That was what let Naomi sleep at night, even as her dreams filled with the faces of the men she'd marked for destruction. She and Damien developed a system. She'd call with a name and details. He'd handle the rest. They didn't meet in person. Too risky. Their relationship existed entirely in phone calls and encrypted messages and the unspoken understanding that what they were doing was both terribly wrong and absolutely necessary. Until the night everything changed. It was late March when Naomi got a call from an unknown number that wasn't Damien. A woman's voice, professional and controlled. Is this Naomi Vale? Who's asking? My name is Detective Selena Ward. I need to speak with you about a pattern I've noticed. Men with histories of domestic violence suddenly facing consequences after their victims received treatment at St. Catherine's ER. You have time for coffee? Naomi's blood turned to ice. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. Tomorrow, noon, the cafe on Atlantic Avenue across from the precinct. Come alone, and come prepared to talk. Because right now, you and your friend are my primary suspects in what might be the most unusual crime spree this city has ever seen. The line went dead. Naomi sat in her apartment, phone clutched in her shaking hand, and realized that the gray area she'd been operating in had just gotten a whole lot darker. The system she'd been subverting had noticed, and now she had to decide. Come clean and face the consequences, or dig deeper and hope she could outrun justice. She called Damien. We have a problem, she said, and told him about Detective Ward. For a long moment, he was silent. Then, don't worry, I'll handle it. How? You let me worry about that. Just go to the meeting, answer her questions honestly, mostly, and trust that I know what I'm doing. Damien, Naomi. His voice was gentle but firm. This was always a possibility. We knew the risks. Now we deal with them, together. That word, together, shouldn't have meant as much as it did, but somehow, over the past month of phone calls and shared secrets and this strange partnership they'd built, Damien Crowe had become the closest thing to a friend Naomi had, which was pathetic, really. Her best friend was a crime lord she'd never properly met, who might or might not be a murderer, and who dragged her into a conspiracy that could put her in prison for the rest of her life. But he'd also saved more lives in 4 weeks than the entire Brooklyn justice system had saved in 4 years. So there was that. Okay, Naomi said. I'll go. I'll talk to her. And then what? Then we see if Detective Ward is the enemy, or if she's something else entirely. What else could she be? Damien laughed, low and dark. An ally. The world's full of people who are tired of watching the system fail, Naomi. Sometimes they wear badges. Sometimes they carry guns. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, they decide that justice matters more than the law. The cafe on Atlantic Avenue smelled like burnt espresso and anxiety. Naomi arrived 10 minutes early, spotted Detective Ward immediately, hard not to when the woman sat with her back to the wall and her eyes on the door like she expected trouble, and seriously considered turning around and walking out. She didn't. Whatever was about to happen, running would only make it worse. Naomi Vale, Ward gestured to the empty chair across from her. Not a question, a statement. She was mid-40s, black, with close-cropped hair, and the kind of tired eyes that came from seeing too much of humanity's worst. Sit. I already ordered you coffee. You take it black, right? How did you, I'm a detective. Detecting is literally my job. Ward pushed a cup across the table. Relax. If I was here to arrest you, we'd be having this conversation in an interview room with your lawyer present. Naomi sat, wrapped her hands around the cup, even though she didn't want the coffee. It gave her something to do with her hands besides fidget. Then why am I here? Because over the past 5 weeks, 17 men with documented histories of domestic violence have either been arrested, disappeared, or left New York in what looks suspiciously like fear for their lives. Ward pulled out a tablet, swiped through screens. Want to guess what they all have in common? Naomi's throat went dry. I wouldn't know. Sure you would. Every single one of them put a woman in street, Catherine's ER, between 12 and 72 hours before their lives fell apart. And you, Nurse Vale, treated 14 of those women personally. Ward set the tablet down, fixed Naomi with a look that could have stripped paint. So let's skip the part where you play dumb, and I pretend to believe you. Someone's targeting these men, someone with access to victims. Someone who knows exactly who to hit and when to hit them. That someone is either you or someone you're feeding information to. The smart play was to lawyer up, refuse to answer questions, protect herself. But Naomi thought about Sophie Monroe, who'd called her last week to say she'd enrolled in community college. Thought about Elise Harper, who'd moved to New Jersey and started over. Thought about all the women who were alive and safe because she'd made a choice. Let's say you're right, Naomi said carefully. Hypothetically. What then? Hypothetically? Ward leaned back, studied her. Then I have a problem, because my job is to uphold the law. But the law failed every single one of those women before someone else stepped in. So now I'm sitting here trying to figure out if what's happening is justice or vigilantism, and whether there's actually a difference anymore. That's not an answer. No, it's a question, and I'm asking you to help me answer it. Ward tapped the tablet. Derek Voss. Tax evasion, fraud, cocaine possession. Evidence appeared overnight like magic. His girlfriend had a ruptured spleen from him kicking her repeatedly in the abdomen. The system failed her. Then someone made sure Derek paid anyway. Another tap. Marcus Chen. Bar fight footage that mysteriously surfaced after someone paid $5,000 for it. His girlfriend had a fractured wrist and strangulation marks. System failed her too. Ward's eyes never left Naomi's face. I could go on. The pattern holds. Every single time the system fails, someone makes it right. And I need to know if that someone is trying to help or if they're building a criminal empire using justice as camouflage. Naomi's pulse hammered in her ears. What do you want from me? The truth. Are you working alone or with someone else? And more importantly, Ward leaned forward, voice dropping low. How many of these men actually deserved what happened to them? All of them. The words came out before Naomi could stop them. Every single one put a woman in my ER with injuries that made me want to scream. Broken bones, internal bleeding, burn marks, strangulation. And you know what happened when those women tried to press charges? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Lawyers made it go away. Judges dismissed it. Victims got too scared to testify. The system you're here representing? It failed them over and over until someone decided to actually do something about it. Ward was quiet for a long moment. Then, so you are working with someone. Naomi's hands tightened on the coffee cup. She'd said too much, revealed too much. Damien had told her to answer honestly, mostly, but she'd just admitted to being part of a conspiracy. I want a lawyer. Relax, I'm not recording this, not building a case. Ward sighed, and suddenly she looked older, more tired. 3 years ago, my sister was beaten to death by her husband. Restraining order, police reports, calls to 911, none of it mattered. He walked into her apartment one night and killed her while their daughter hid in the closet. He got 12 years, served 4, got out on good behavior, and immediately started dating someone new. As far as I know, he hasn't touched her. Yet. She met Naomi's eyes. So when I see a pattern of abusers facing real consequences for once in their miserable lives, part of me wants to pin a medal on whoever's making it happen. The other part knows that vigilante justice is a door we can't walk through without destroying everything the law is supposed to stand for. The law already destroyed itself, Naomi said quietly. It just took us a while to notice. Maybe. Ward picked up her own coffee, drank, made a face. Here's where we are. I know you're involved. I know someone with serious resources is making these men disappear or face consequences. I can build a case, get warrants, bring down whoever's running this operation, or I can look the other way, accidentally lose track of the pattern, fail to connect the dots. Ward's jaw tightened. But if I do that, I need to know it's not going to escalate. No bodies, no murders, no crossing lines that can't be uncrossed. Can you promise me that? Naomi thought about Damien, about the cold calculation in his eyes when he dealt with Marcus, about Ryan Castellano, who'd vanished without a trace. I can't make that promise for someone else. Then introduce me. Let me talk to whoever's running this, because right now I'm making a choice that could end my career or save lives, and I need to know which one it is before I commit. That's not my call to make. Then make it someone else's call. Fast. Because my captain noticed the pattern too, and he's not as conflicted about it as I am. You've got 48 hours before this becomes an official investigation. Ward stood, dropped a business card on the table. My personal cell. When your friend decides whether they trust me or not, have them call. She walked out, leaving Naomi alone with cold coffee and a decision that could get her killed. Naomi waited until she was back in her apartment before calling Damien. He answered on the first ring. How'd it go? She knows. Not all of it, but enough. Naomi paced her tiny living room, too wired to sit. She wants to meet you, says she'll look the other way if she can be sure we're not escalating. And if she can't be sure, then we're all going to prison. Damien was quiet for a moment. What's your read on her? I think she's tired of watching the system fail. I think she lost someone to domestic violence, and it broke something in her. And I think she's serious about shutting us down if she decides we've crossed a line. Naomi stopped pacing, stared out her window at the Brooklyn night. She asked about bodies, about whether anyone's been killed. I didn't know what to tell her. Tell her the truth. No one's died. What about Ryan Castellano? Alive and well in a very secure facility in upstate New York. He's spending his days learning what it feels like to be powerless. But he's breathing. They all are. Damien's voice was firm. I told you, Naomi. I'm not a murderer. I'm just someone who makes sure certain men face consequences they've spent their lives avoiding. She wants to meet you, 48 hours. Then I'll meet her, set it up, somewhere public, plenty of witnesses. And Naomi? He paused. Thank you for trusting me enough to have this conversation instead of running. Where would I run to? You're the only person who understands what we're doing. No, Damien said softly. Detective Ward understands too. That's why she's giving us a chance instead of burning us down. The question is whether we're smart enough to take it. The meeting happened 2 nights later in Prospect Park, near the lake where joggers and dog walkers created a constant flow of witnesses. Naomi arrived first, found a bench with good sight lines. Ward showed up 5 minutes later, alone, wearing jeans and a jacket that couldn't quite hide her shoulder holster. "You coming?" Ward asked. He said he would. They waited. 15 minutes passed. 20. Naomi was starting to think Damien had changed his mind when he appeared, seeming to materialize from the shadows like he'd been there all along. Detective Ward. He sat down next to Naomi, and she could see the careful way he moved, still favoring his ribs even though the knife wound should have healed by now. I hear you've been investigating my work. Ward studied him with the kind of intensity that probably made suspects confess to crimes they didn't commit. Your work? Interesting way to describe it. What would you call it? I'm still deciding. She crossed her arms. You've got 2 minutes to convince me this isn't going to end with bodies. Talk. Damien didn't hesitate. I run a network, not a large one, maybe a dozen people with various skills. When Naomi or someone else identifies an abuser the system can't or won't touch, we investigate. Thoroughly. And when we're certain, absolutely certain, that we have the right target, we make sure they face consequences. Sometimes that's legal consequences. Evidence delivered to the right prosecutor. Witnesses convinced to come forward. Paper trails uncovered. He met Ward's eyes. Sometimes it's less legal. Men encouraged to leave town, threats made, fear instilled. But no one dies. No one disappears permanently. They just learn that there are still some people in this world who'll make them pay for their actions. Ryan Castellano, Ward said. Where is he? A private rehabilitation facility in the Adirondacks. He's learning to manage his anger issues. It'll take years. Against his will? Let's call it strongly encouraged. That's kidnapping. It's justice. Damien's voice hardened. Ryan Castellano hospitalized 3 women in 18 months. The last one lost her spleen. She was 22 years old, and she'll live with the consequences of his violence for the rest of her life. He spent 1 night in jail before his lawyer got him out. So yes, detective, I kidnapped him. I took him somewhere he can't hurt anyone while he learns to be a better human being. And I'd do it again tomorrow if another Ryan Castellano walked into Naomi's ER. Ward's expression didn't change. You think you're above the law. I think the law is broken. I think it protects the wrong people and fails the ones who need it most. And I think someone has to pick up the slack. By becoming exactly what you claim to fight against? Someone who uses power and violence to get what they want? The difference, Damien said quietly, is that I use it to protect people, not to hurt them. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. So is the road to heaven. Guess we'll find out which one we're on when we get there. Damien leaned back, winced slightly at the movement. You asked Naomi if anyone's been killed. The answer is no. You want to know if anyone will be killed in the future? I can't promise that. Because eventually, we're going to run into someone who can't be scared off. Someone too powerful, or too connected, or too insane to respond to anything less than permanent removal. And when that happens, I'll have to make a choice I'd rather not make. Ward was silent for a long moment. How many names are on your list right now? 12. But it grows every week. The more we succeed, the more victims hear about us. The more they reach out. Jesus. Ward ran a hand over her face. You're building an underground railroad for domestic violence victims. I'm building a safety net for the people who fall through every other safety net. Damien pulled out his phone, showed Ward the screen. This is my phone. No security, no encryption. You want to arrest me? Take it. Call your captain. Build your case. But before you do, look at these messages. Ward took the phone, scrolled. Her expression shifted as she read. Message after message from women, some with names, some anonymous. Thank you. I'm safe now. My daughter doesn't flinch when doors slam anymore. I can sleep without nightmares. You saved my life. These are all from the past month, Damien said. 43 women who are alive and safe because we stepped in when no one else would. So yeah, what we're doing is illegal. It's vigilantism. It's everything you're supposed to fight against. But it's also the only thing standing between those 43 women and the men who would have killed them eventually. Ward handed back the phone. I lost my sister because the system failed her. Now I'm supposed to protect that same system by shutting you down. You see my problem? I see it perfectly. And I'm not going to make it easier for you by pretending there's a clean answer here. Damien stood. You have to decide what you believe in more, the law as it exists or justice as it should be. I can't make that choice for you. No one can. He walked away, leaving Naomi alone with Ward. Is he always that intense? Ward asked. You should see him when he's actually trying to make a point. Naomi's attempt at humor fell flat. What are you going to do? Honestly, I don't know. Ward stared at the lake, watching the city lights reflect on dark water. Everything I know says I should shut this down, but everything I feel says you're doing the work the rest of us don't have the guts to do. So I'm going to make you the same offer I made before. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep it clean. And if you're going after someone particularly dangerous or well-connected, you call me first. Let me know what's coming so I'm not blindsided. You're serious. I'm insane. But yeah, I'm serious. Ward finally looked at her. My captain will keep investigating. I'll slow walk it, lose evidence, be generally incompetent. But I can't protect you forever. Eventually, someone higher up will notice the pattern. So use this time wisely. Help who you can. And for the love of everything, don't let your friend's crusade turn into a body count. Naomi wanted to feel relief. Instead, she just felt the weight of one more person pulled into their orbit. One more life at risk because the system had failed too many times. Thank you, she said. Don't thank me yet. I haven't decided if I'm helping you or enabling something terrible. Ward stood. But I guess we'll all find out together. The next 3 weeks were the busiest of Naomi's life. Word had spread somehow. She didn't know how, didn't ask, and women started showing up at St. Catherine's asking for her specifically. Not all of them were victims of violence. Some were friends of victims, sisters, mothers. They came with names and addresses and stories that made Naomi's stomach turn. She passed every credible case to Damien. He and his network moved fast, efficient, surgical in their precision. A real estate developer who'd put his girlfriend in the hospital 3 times was arrested for bribery and fraud. A police officer, Naomi hated that one, hated having to acknowledge that some cops were monsters too, was caught planting evidence and fired, then disappeared when Damien's people made it clear he wasn't welcome in New York anymore. The names kept coming, the network kept working, and slowly, quietly, Brooklyn started to change. It was Ward who brought them the case that changed everything. She called Naomi on a Tuesday night, voice tight. We need to meet. Your friend too, now. They met at the same bench in Prospect Park. Ward looked like she hadn't slept in days. I have a problem, she said without preamble. Actually, we all have a problem. His name is Victor Hale. Damien frowned. The family court judge? The same. Respected, connected, untouchable. Also a domestic abuser who's been beating his wife Lillian for the better part of 15 years. Ward pulled out a file, handed it to Damien. I've been building this for months. Hospital records under different names. Witness statements from staff who've seen Lillian with bruises. But every time I think I have enough to move forward, the evidence disappears. Witnesses recant. Files get lost. Naomi took the folder, flipped through it. The photos made her sick. Lillian Hale, elegant and composed in public photos, barely recognizable in the hospital records. Black eyes, broken ribs, a fractured cheekbone, all carefully documented by ER staff, all attributed to falls or accidents or her own clumsiness. "Why bring this to us?" Damien asked. "Because Victor Hale isn't just abusing his wife. He's using his position on the bench to protect other abusers. Custody cases where mothers with restraining orders lose their kids to violent fathers. Divorces where abused women walk away with nothing while their abusers get everything. He's actively weaponizing the legal system to enable violence." Ward's hands clenched into fists. "I can't touch him. My department can't touch him. He's too connected, too careful." "But you've been making impossible things happen for months now, so I'm asking, can you help her?" Damien studied the file in silence. Naomi watched his face, saw the moment he committed to whatever was coming next. "Victor Hale is a different kind of target," he said finally. "We can't make him disappear, can't threaten him. He has security. Can't dig up dirt because he's smart enough to keep his hands clean outside his own home. Going after him the way we've gone after others will fail and expose us." "So we do nothing?" Ward's voice rose. "Let him keep beating his wife, keep destroying families from the bench?" "I didn't say that. I said going after him the usual way won't work." Damien closed the file. "We need something different, something that turns his power against him. And I think I know how to do it, but it's going to be dangerous. For all of us." "Tell me," Ward said. "We need Lillian. She's the only one with access to his private life. His files, his communications, the evidence he's careful to keep hidden." Damien met Ward's eyes. "We convince her to become our inside source. She gathers proof of everything, the abuse, the corruption, the ways he's manipulating the legal system. And then we make sure that proof reaches people he can't silence." Naomi shook her head. "Oh, she'll never agree. Abused women don't just turn on their abusers, they're terrified, which is why we have to give her a reason to hope. Show her she's not alone, that there's a way out." Damien turned to Ward. "Can you get us a meeting with her? Somewhere Victor won't know about?" "Maybe. She volunteers at a women's shelter on Thursday mornings. I could arrange for her to meet someone there, someone who understands what she's going through." Ward looked at Naomi. "Someone like you." The shelter was in Park Slope, housed in an old brownstone that looked like any other building on the tree-lined street. Naomi arrived at 10 a.m., was buzzed inside by a volunteer who looked her over carefully before allowing her past the entrance. Lillian Hale was in the common room, reading to a group of children whose mothers sat nearby with haunted eyes and healing bruises. She was beautiful in that careful, controlled way that came from years of practice. Hair perfectly styled, makeup artfully applied to hide the fading yellow-green of an old bruise along her jaw. Clothes expensive but modest. Everything about her screamed money and status and the kind of polished exterior that hid terrible secrets. Naomi waited until the reading session ended, until Lillian was alone in the small kitchen making tea. "Mrs. Hale, my name is Naomi Vale. Detective Ward asked me to speak with you." Lillian's hand stilled on the teapot. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do. The same way I know that bruise on your jaw is from a backhand, not from walking into a cabinet. The same way I know you've been to 6 different hospitals in the past 5 years to avoid creating a pattern." Naomi kept her voice gentle. "I'm an ER nurse. I've seen what your husband does to you." For a long moment, Lillian just stood there, perfectly composed. Then her shoulders sagged, and suddenly she looked older, more fragile. "Selena shouldn't have sent you. There's nothing anyone can do." "There is if you help us." "Help you do what? Arrest him?" "He's a judge. He has friends in the DA's office, the police department, everywhere that matters. Even if I testified, it would go nowhere. He'd make sure of that." "We're not talking about arresting him. Not yet." Naomi moved closer, lowered her voice. "We're talking about gathering evidence, real evidence. Financial records, communications, proof of the corruption he's buried, things that even his friends can't make disappear once they're public." Lillian laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You want me to spy on my husband, risk my life to gather information that might not even matter. I want to give you a chance to be free, to make sure he never hurts you or anyone else again." Naomi pulled out her phone, showed Lillian the same messages Damien had shown Ward. These women were all in situations like yours, trapped, terrified, certain there was no way out, and now they're safe because someone helped them. Let us help you. Lillian read the messages, her hand trembling slightly. "Who are you people?" We're the ones who step in when the system fails, and the system has failed you for 15 years. Naomi put her phone away. I won't lie to you. This is dangerous. If Victor finds out what you're doing, he'll hurt you worse than ever before. But if you succeed, if we can get enough evidence to bury him, you walk away free. Divorced, protected, finally safe. And every woman he would have hurt from the bench, every family he would have destroyed, they're safe too. Lillian set down her tea with shaking hands. I need to think about it. You have 48 hours. After that, the risk gets too high. Naomi handed her a card with a phone number. When you're ready to talk, call. Someone will answer. Someone who can help. She left Lillian standing in the kitchen and prayed she'd made the right choice. 2 days later, Lillian called. I'll do it, Lillian said when Naomi answered the phone. Her voice was steady, but Naomi could hear the fear underneath. I'll help you bring him down. Just tell me what you need. They met that night in a diner on the edge of Brooklyn, the kind of place where nobody looked twice at strangers having quiet conversations in corner booths. Damien was already there when Naomi arrived with Lillian, and he stood when they approached, offering his hand like they were meeting for a business lunch instead of planning to destroy one of the most powerful men in the city. Mrs. Hale, thank you for coming. Lillian shook his hand briefly, then slid into the booth. She dressed down, jeans, a plain sweater, hair pulled back, but she still carried herself with the kind of rigid composure that came from years of hiding pain behind perfect posture. Let's skip the pleasantries. What exactly are you asking me to do? Damien didn't waste time. Your husband keeps files. We know he does because men like him always do. Insurance, leverage, proof of the deals he's made, and the people he's protected. Those files are somewhere in your house, probably his home office. We need you to find them and copy everything. That's it? Just walk into his office and steal his secrets? Lillian's laugh was sharp. You make it sound easy. It won't be easy. It'll be the most dangerous thing you've ever done. Damien's eyes were serious. But you have access he doesn't expect you to use. You're invisible to him in the ways that matter. He doesn't see you as a threat. He sees me as property. There's a difference. We'll use that difference. Play the role he expects. The quiet wife who doesn't ask questions. And when he's not looking, you gather everything we need to bury him. Lillian was quiet for a moment, fingers tracing patterns on the table. He has a safe in his office, combination lock, hidden behind a bookshelf. I've seen him open it twice. I might be able to remember the numbers. That's good. That's a start. Well, Damien pulled out a small device, no bigger than a USB drive. This is a data cloner. You plug it into his computer, it copies everything on the hard drive. Takes about 20 minutes. Can you get 20 minutes alone in his office? Thursday nights he plays poker with his friends. Doesn't come home until past midnight. Sometimes later if he's winning. Lillian took the device, turned it over in her hands. What if he has passwords, encryption? Our tech person will handle that once we have the data. Your job is just to get it to us. Damien slid a phone across the table. Burner. Untraceable. You see anything important, you photograph it with this and send it to the number programmed in. Don't use your regular phone. Don't deviate from your normal routine. And if he suspects anything at all, you abort immediately and call Detective Ward. Lillian pocketed both items. How long do we have? As long as it takes. But the faster we move, the less chance he has to realize what's happening. Damien's voice gentlened slightly. I know what I'm asking. I know the risk. If you want to back out, now's the time. I've spent 15 years being afraid of him, hiding bruises, making excuses, pretending my life was normal while he broke me down piece by piece. Lillian met his eyes, and there was steel underneath the fear. I'm done being afraid. I'm done being his victim. So whatever you need, whatever it takes to make sure he pays for everything he's done, I'll do it. Naomi reached across the table, squeezed Lillian's hand. You're not alone in this. We're watching, protecting you. And the moment we have enough, we pull you out. How? Trust us, Damien said. We've done this before. Never with someone this high profile. Never with stakes this high. But we've gotten people out of worse situations. You just have to hold on a little longer. Lillian nodded slowly. Okay. Thursday night then. I'll get you something. She left first, disappearing into the Brooklyn night like a ghost. Naomi watched her go and felt the weight of what they'd just set in motion. She's terrified, Naomi said. She should be. What we're asking her to do could get her killed. Damien finished his coffee, grimaced. But she's also the only chance we have. Victor Hale has been untouchable for too long. Someone has to stop him. And if something goes wrong, if he catches her, then we move fast. Get her out, deal with the fallout, and hope we got enough to hurt him even without the full evidence. Damien stood, dropped cash on the table. But nothing's going to go wrong. We'll make sure of that. Thursday came too fast and too slow at the same time. Naomi worked her shift at St. Catherine's in a fog of anxiety, checking her phone every 10 minutes, even though Lillian had strict instructions not to make contact until the job was done. Ward had positioned a surveillance team a block from the Hale residence, not close enough to be obvious, but near enough to respond if things went bad. At 9 p.m., Naomi's phone buzzed. A text from the burner number. He just left. I'm going in. For the next hour, Naomi paced her apartment and tried not to imagine all the ways this could go wrong. Victor could come home early. The safe could be different than Lillian remembered. The computer could have additional security. 1,000 variables, any one of which could end with Lillian dead or arrested or disappeared into the kind of hell that made her current life look merciful by comparison. At 10:15, another text. Got into the safe. Photographing documents now. Computer copying. Naomi's hand shook as she typed back, how much longer? Maybe 10 minutes. There's a lot here. More than we thought. Be careful. Don't take risks. Too late for that. The minutes crawled by like hours. Naomi had never been religious, but she found herself bargaining with whatever higher power might be listening. Just keep her safe. Just let this work. Just this once. Let the good guys win. At 10:40, the phone rang. Damien. She's done. Computer's copied, safe is photographed, everything's back where it was. She's in the clear. Naomi's legs gave out and she sat down hard on her couch. Thank God. Don't celebrate yet. We still have to get the data analyzed, figure out what we have. But Lillian did good. Really good. There was satisfaction in Damien's voice. She sent over 300 photos and the computer had over 50,000 files. If even a fraction of this is what we think it is, Victor Hale is done. When will you know? Give us 48 hours. My tech person is the best, but this is a lot of data to sort through. We need to find the smoking guns, build the case, figure out who to send it to that Victor can't silence. Damien paused. How you holding up? I've been better. Every time we do this, every time we put someone at risk, I wonder if we're actually helping or just making things worse. We're helping. Look at how many women are safe now because we stepped in. Look at Lillian. She's scared, yeah. But she's also got hope for the first time in years. That matters. Hope doesn't mean much if she ends up dead. She won't. I won't let that happen. Damien's voice was firm. Get some sleep, Naomi. Tomorrow we start sorting through evidence, and I'm going to need you clear-headed. Naomi didn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling and thinking about Lillian Hale alone in that house with a monster, pretending everything was normal while sitting on evidence that could destroy him. The bravery it took to do what she'd done was staggering and terrifying. The next morning, Ward called. We need to meet. Your friend too. I've seen some of the photos Lillian sent, and we have a serious problem. They met at Ward's apartment this time. A small one-bedroom in Crown Heights that was somehow messier than Naomi expected for a cop. Files everywhere, coffee cups on every surface, a cat that glared at them from the kitchen counter like they'd personally offended it. Sorry about the mess, Ward said without sounding particularly sorry. I've been working the Hale case non-stop since we got the data drop. Damien's tech person sent me copies of everything. She gestured to her laptop where a photo was pulled up. This is from Victor's safe. Look at it. Naomi leaned in. The photo showed a ledger, handwritten entries with dates, names, and dollar amounts. It took her a moment to understand what she was seeing, and when she did, her stomach dropped. These are bribes, Ward said. Payments to lawyers, prosecutors, even other judges. Victor's been running a protection racket for abusers across the entire borough. You pay him enough, he makes sure the case goes your way. Custody dispute? He awards the kids to the father, even with a documented history of violence. Divorce settlement? He gives everything to the abuser. Criminal trial? He coordinates with prosecutors to get charges dropped. Damien was studying a different photo on his phone. How many people are implicated here? At least 30. Maybe more once we dig deeper into the financial records. Ward's expression was grim. This isn't just about Victor anymore. This is a conspiracy that reaches into every level of the judicial system. We're talking about judges, lawyers, cops, people who were supposed to protect victims and instead sold them out for cash. So what do we do? Naomi asked. We can't take this to the DA. Half the names in that ledger work in the DA's office. Ward started pacing, and her cat watched with narrowed eyes. We can't trust local PD, can't trust the courts. Hell, I'm not even sure we can trust the FBI. Victor's got friends in federal law enforcement too. Then we go public, Damien said. Bypass the system entirely. Give it to reporters, put it online, make it impossible to bury. That could work, but it also exposes Lillian. The moment this goes public, Victor will know exactly where it came from. She's the only person with access to his safe. Ward stopped pacing. We need to get her out first. Set her up somewhere safe before we blow this wide open. Already working on it. I have a place upstate, secure, off the grid. She can stay there until the dust settles. Damien looked at Naomi. But we need to convince her to leave. Now. Tonight if possible. Because once we start making moves, Victor will figure it out fast. Naomi pulled out her phone, called the burner number. It rang 6 times before Lillian answered, her voice tight and quiet. I can't talk long. He's in the next room. We need you to leave. Pack a bag, tell him you're visiting your sister, anything, but you need to get out of that house tonight. Silence. Then, you found something. We found everything, enough to put him away for the rest of his life, but that also means you're in danger. He can't know you're the source until you're somewhere safe. I can't just leave. He'll be suspicious. He watches me, tracks my phone, monitors my credit cards. If I deviate from my routine at all, then we make it look like you're not deviating. You go to the places you normally go. But when you're at the grocery store tomorrow afternoon, you walk out the back exit where someone will be waiting. They'll take you somewhere safe while we handle Victor. This is really happening. Lillian's voice wavered. After all these years, he's actually going to pay. He's going to pay, but only if you get out safely first. Naomi could hear Victor's voice in the background calling for Lillian. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., the grocery store on 5th Avenue. Can you do that? I'll be there. The line went dead. Naomi looked at Damien and Ward. She's in. Good. Damien stood. I'll have my people in place. The moment she's secure, we start releasing the evidence. Multiple news outlets simultaneously, so it can't be contained, and then we wait for Victor's world to collapse. Ward shook her head. You make it sound simple, but men like Victor don't go down without a fight. Even with all this evidence, even with his crimes exposed, he's going to have friends trying to protect him. This could get ugly. It's already ugly, Naomi said. At least now we're fighting back. Friday afternoon, Naomi stood outside the grocery store on 5th Avenue trying to look casual while her heart hammered against her ribs. Ward was half a block away in an unmarked car. Damien was inside the store pretending to shop. 2 of his people, Naomi had never met them, didn't know their names, were positioned at the back exit with a car running. At 2:03, Lillian walked in. She moved like she was being pulled by strings, every step mechanical and careful. She had a shopping list in her hand, a canvas bag over her shoulder. To anyone watching, she was just another woman running errands on a Friday afternoon. Naomi watched her disappear into the store. Waited. Every second felt like an eternity. At 2:15, Damien emerged and gave a small nod. Lillian was out. She was safe. Naomi's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Package delivered. She's asking for you. The safe house was in Westchester, a small cottage on 5 acres of woods that probably looked charming in the summer but felt isolated and slightly ominous in late March. Naomi arrived just after dark, was greeted at the door by a woman in her 40s with close-cropped hair and the kind of watchful eyes that suggested military training. She's in the living room, hasn't said much since we got here. Lillian sat on a worn couch, staring at nothing. She'd changed clothes, someone must have brought her something, and looked smaller somehow, like leaving Victor's house had deflated her. Hey, Naomi said softly. You okay? I don't know. I thought I'd feel relieved, free. But I just feel... Lillian's voice broke. What if this doesn't work? What if he finds a way to make this go away like he makes everything go away? He won't. We have too much evidence, and we're releasing it too widely. Naomi sat beside her. By tomorrow morning, every major news outlet in New York will have copies of those files. The story will be everywhere. And once it's public, there's no covering it up. He'll know it was me. He'll come after me.
Let him try. You're protected here, and the moment he makes any move toward you, he'll have every cop in the state looking for him. Naomi took Lillian's hand. You were brave, incredibly brave, and because of you, he's finally going to face consequences. Lillian wiped her eyes. I spent so many years being afraid of him, believing he was untouchable, that no one would ever believe me over him. And now people are actually going to see him for what he is. A monster in expensive suits. More than see him, they're going to make sure he pays. They sat in silence for a while. Outside, night sounds filtered through the windows, wind in the trees, some animal moving through the underbrush. Normal sounds, safe sounds, the kind of peace Lillian probably hadn't felt in 15 years. What happens to me after this? Lillian asked quietly. When it's all over and he's arrested or whatever, where do I go? Anywhere you want. You'll have divorce lawyers, protection, resources. Damien's people will make sure you're set up with a new life if that's what you need. But that's your choice. For the first time in a long time, you get to choose. Lillian nodded slowly. I think I'd like that. Getting to choose. Naomi stayed until Lillian fell asleep on the couch, exhausted from years of fear finally releasing their grip. Then she drove back to Brooklyn, to her apartment, to wait for the storm that was about to break over Victor Hale's carefully constructed life. At 6 a.m. Saturday morning, the story dropped. The New York Times led with it. Family court judge accused of running protection racket for domestic abusers. Within an hour, every news outlet in the city was running versions of the same story. Photos of the ledger, excerpts from emails, testimony from women whose cases Victor had ruled on, who were willing to go on record now that someone had finally exposed him. By noon, federal agents had raided Victor's home and office. By evening, he was under arrest. Naomi watched it unfold on television, on her phone, on every screen she could find. It felt surreal. For so long, she'd been fighting a losing battle against a system that didn't care. And now, finally, the system was working, or at least the system was being forced to work by people who'd operated outside it. Her phone rang. Damien, you watching? Can't stop watching. Naomi's voice was rough. Is this real? Are we really winning? We're really winning. Victor's being held without bail. His lawyer friends are scrambling, but there's too much evidence to fight. And the DA's office just announced they're opening investigations into every case he ruled on for the past 10 years. What about the other names in the ledger? Warrants are being issued. Arrests are being made. It's a cascade effect. Each person who goes down is giving up someone else to save their own skin. Damien sounded tired but satisfied. It's going to take months to sort through all of this. But we did it, Naomi. We actually did it. Lillian did it. She's the brave one. You all were. You, Lillian, Ward, everyone who refused to accept that evil should win just because it's powerful. He paused. You should get some rest. This is going to get intense before it gets better. He was right. Over the next week, the story consumed the city. Reporters camped outside the courthouse. Victims came forward in droves, telling stories about cases Victor had sabotaged. The mayor called for reforms. The state legislature promised investigations. And through it all, Victor Hale sat in a cell and watched his empire crumble. Ward called on the 8th day. We got a problem. Victor's lawyers are arguing that the evidence was obtained illegally. They're filing motions to suppress everything from the safe and the computer. Naomi's stomach dropped. Can they do that? They can try. And if they succeed, most of our case disappears. The ledger, the emails, the financial records, all of it becomes inadmissible. Ward's frustration was evident. Without that evidence, we might not be able to convict him of anything more than assault on Lillian, and his lawyers are already building a defense for that. So everything we did was for nothing? Not nothing. We exposed him. We've already shut down his protection racket just by making it public. But in terms of actually putting him in prison for a long time, that's looking less certain. Naomi hung up and immediately called Damien. Tell me you have a backup plan. Working on it. The problem is that Lillian's testimony about the abuse is still solid. That evidence came from medical records, not the illegal search. But proving the broader conspiracy requires the documents from his safe, and if those get suppressed, he trailed off. I'm not giving up yet. There has to be a way to make the evidence legitimate. How? We can't exactly go back in time and get a warrant. No, but we might be able to find someone else who has access to that information legally, someone Victor shared it with, or someone who kept their own records. Damien's voice sharpened. I need to make some calls. I'll get back to you. 2 days later, Ward showed up at Naomi's apartment with news. We found something. One of the lawyers in Victor's ledger, a guy named Thomas Brennan, got scared when the arrest started. Came to us with his own records of payments to Victor. Dates, amounts, cases. It corroborates everything we found in Victor's safe, but it came from Brennan voluntarily. That makes it legal evidence. Is it enough? Combined with Lillian's testimony and the medical records and the victims willing to testify about their cases? Yeah, it's enough. Ward allowed herself a small smile. Victor's lawyers are still going to fight. This is going to be a long trial, but we have him. He's not walking away from this. Naomi felt something release in her chest. A tension she'd been carrying for so long she'd forgotten it was there. Lillian needs to know. Already told her. She cried for about 20 minutes, then asked if she could testify. Not just about the abuse. About everything. The corruption, the protection racket, the way he destroyed families from the bench. Ward's expression softened. She wants to face him in court. Look him in the eye while she tells the truth. She's stronger than I thought. She's stronger than she thought. That's what happens when you finally realize you're not alone anymore. The trial started in June, and Naomi attended every day she could, sitting in the gallery and watching Victor Hale face consequences for the first time in his life. He looked smaller in the defendant's seat, less imposing without his robes and his power and his carefully controlled courtroom. Lillian testified for 3 days. She was calm, steady, devastating. She described years of abuse in clinical detail, showed the jury photos of her injuries, explained how Victor had used his position to shield himself and others from accountability. And through it all, she never looked away from him. On the 3rd day, Victor's lawyer tried to shake her during cross-examination. Mrs. Hale, isn't it true that you stayed with my client for 15 years of your own free will? No. You weren't imprisoned. You could have left at any time. That's not how abuse works. He made sure I had nowhere to go, no money of my own, no support system, and he made it clear that if I tried to leave, he'd destroy me. Lillian's voice was steady. You don't understand what it's like to be that afraid. To know that the person who's supposed to love you is the most dangerous person in your world. But you did eventually leave. In fact, you left to provide evidence against him. That sounds like someone with agency, not a victim. I left because someone finally showed me I could, because people I'd never met decided I was worth saving. Lillian looked directly at the jury. Your client is very good at making people feel worthless and alone, but I'm not alone anymore, and I'm not afraid of him anymore. That's why I can sit here and tell you the truth. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, their verdict was unanimous on all counts: conspiracy, bribery, witness tampering, obstruction of justice, assault. The list went on. Victor Hale was sentenced to 35 years in federal prison. Naomi watched him being led away in handcuffs and felt a complicated mix of emotions. Satisfaction? Yes. Relief? Absolutely. But also a strange sense of hollowness, like now that this particular battle was over, she didn't know what to do with herself. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Lillian gave a brief statement about justice and accountability and hope for other victims. Ward stood beside her, professional and composed, giving nothing away about her own role in bringing Victor down. Damien was nowhere to be seen. He never was when cameras were around. Later that night, he called Naomi. How you feeling? Honestly? I don't know. We won. We actually won. But I keep thinking about all the women who suffered before we stopped him. All the years he got away with it. You can't save everyone. You can only save the ones you can reach. Damien's voice was quiet. But we reached a lot of people, Naomi. Not just Lillian. Every woman whose case Victor sabotaged gets a chance for a new hearing now.
Every abuser he protected is being investigated. The ripple effects of this are going to last for years. Is it enough? It's never enough. There will always be more people who need help, more predators who think they're untouchable, more systems that fail the people they're supposed to protect. He paused. But we proved something. We proved that even the most powerful abusers can fall. That justice is possible if you're willing to fight for it. That matters. Naomi thought the hard part was over. She was wrong. Victor's conviction sent shockwaves through Brooklyn's legal community, and not all of them were positive. Within a week of the verdict, 3 of the lawyers named in his ledger had fled the state. 2 prosecutors resigned. A district court judge was found dead in his apartment from what the police were calling a suicide, though Ward had her doubts. "People are scared," Ward said when she stopped by St. Catherine's during Naomi's shift. Victor kept records on everyone. Names, dates, payments, and now that he's going away for 35 years, they're all wondering who else is going to get exposed. Good. Let them be scared. Naomi was checking inventory in the supply closet, counting syringes with more force than necessary. They should have thought about that before they helped him destroy people's lives. I'm not disagreeing, but scared people do desperate things. And some of them know who helped bring Victor down. Ward leaned against the doorframe. You need to be careful. Lillian, too. Just because Victor's in prison doesn't mean his friends have given up. Are you saying we're in danger? I'm saying stay alert. Watch your back. Don't go anywhere alone if you can help it. Ward's phone buzzed, and she checked it, frowned. I have to go. Press conference about the investigation. But I mean it, Naomi. Be careful. Naomi tried to take the warning seriously, but after months of operating in the shadows, being told to watch her back felt almost quaint. She'd been in danger since the night she first called Damien. This was just a new variation on the same theme. She finished her shift, drove home through the summer twilight, parked in her usual spot behind her apartment building. The neighborhood was quiet, familiar. She'd lived here for 6 years and knew every crack in the sidewalk, every flickering streetlight. Nothing felt wrong. She was halfway to her door when someone grabbed her from behind. Naomi's training kicked in before her brain caught up. She drove her elbow back hard, felt it connect with ribs. Her attacker grunted but didn't let go. And then there was a second person, and a hand clamped over her mouth before she could scream. Easy, a voice said in her ear. Male, rough. We just want to talk. They dragged her toward a dark sedan idling at the curb. Naomi fought, kicked, tried to bite the hand covering her mouth. One of them hit her, a sharp crack across the face that made her vision blur. She tasted blood. Then there were shouts, running footsteps. Her attackers dropped her and ran. Naomi hit the pavement hard, scraped her hands trying to catch herself. Someone was beside her, helping her up. A neighbor maybe, or, "You okay?" Damien. Of course it was Damien. He'd probably been following her since she left the hospital. "Talk to me, Naomi." "I'm fine, just give me a second." Her lip was bleeding, her face throbbed where she'd been hit. "Who were they?" "Friends of Victor's would be my guess. Come on, you're not staying here tonight, not until we figure out who sent them." He got her into his car, a nondescript black sedan that probably cost more than she made in a year, and drove. Naomi held a tissue to her bleeding lip and tried to process what had just happened. Someone had tried to grab her off the street, would have grabbed her if Damien hadn't been there. "How did you know?" she asked. "I've had people watching you since the trial ended. Ward was right to be worried. Victor's people are panicking, and panicked criminals make bad decisions." Damien took a corner too fast, checked his mirrors. "I should have been more careful. Should have had someone closer." "You can't protect me 24/7. Watch me." His jaw was tight, and Naomi realized he was angry. Not at her, but at himself. "This is my fault. I pulled you into this mess, and now you're a target. I chose this. No one forced me. Choosing and understanding the consequences aren't the same thing. You're a nurse, not a soldier. You shouldn't have to worry about being grabbed off the street because you helped expose a corrupt judge." They ended up at a different safe house, this one in Queens. Smaller than the Westchester cottage, more urban, the kind of place that blended into the neighborhood so completely you'd never notice it was there. Damien got her inside, checked the windows, made sure the security system was armed. "Stay here tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure out next steps." "What about my shift? I have to work tomorrow." "Call in sick, take a few days, let things cool down." Damien pulled out his phone, made a call. It's me. Yeah, she's safe. Get Ward over here. We need to talk strategy. He hung up, looked at Naomi. I'm not leaving you alone until we know who sent those men. You can't babysit me forever. I can until the immediate threat is handled. He disappeared into the kitchen, came back with ice wrapped in a towel. For your face. Naomi pressed it to her swelling cheek and tried not to feel grateful. She was supposed to be strong, independent, capable of taking care of herself. But right now, having Damien here felt like the only thing keeping her from falling apart completely. Ward arrived 20 minutes later with Lillian in tow. Lillian looked better than she had during the trial, healthier, more color in her face, less of that brittle tension that came from years of abuse. But her eyes went wide when she saw Naomi's injuries. What happened? Someone tried to grab me outside my apartment. Damien stopped them. Naomi lowered the ice pack. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're bleeding and bruised, and someone just tried to kidnap you. Lillian sat down hard on the couch. This is because of me. Because I testified. This is because Victor Hale spent 15 years building a criminal empire and we tore it down. The consequences were always going to be messy. Ward pulled out her tablet, started taking notes. Did you get a look at them? 2 men, both white, 30s or 40s. One had a scar on his neck, dark sedan, couldn't see the plates. Naomi tried to remember more details, but everything after the first grab was a blur of panic and pain. They said they wanted to talk. They wanted to scare you, make you recant your involvement or disappear or both. Ward typed rapidly. I'll put out a description, see if anyone matching it has ties to Victor or the other indicted officials. But Naomi, you need to think seriously about protective custody. No. Be reasonable. These people know where you live, where you work, and putting me in protective custody won't change that. It'll just make me a prisoner in a different way. Naomi set down the ice pack. I've spent the last 6 months helping women escape their prisons. I'm not going to lock myself in one now. Damien had been quiet during this exchange, but now he spoke up. She doesn't need protective custody. She needs protection. That's different. You can't guard her every second of every day, Ward said. No, but I can make sure she's never alone and vulnerable, and I can send a message to whoever tried this that there will be consequences. Damien's voice had gone cold again, that dangerous edge Naomi remembered from the night in the ER. They came after one of ours. That requires a response. What kind of response? Lillian asked nervously. The kind that makes sure it doesn't happen again. Ward shook her head. I can't condone vigilante retaliation. Then don't. Look the other way like you've been doing for months. Damien stood, started pacing. Victor's people think they can intimidate us into silence. They think we're weak because we operate outside the system. We need to show them they're wrong. By doing what? Beating up random attackers? That's not going to solve anything. No, but finding out who sent them and making an example will. Damien stopped pacing, looked at Ward. You want this to stop? You want Naomi and Lillian and everyone else who helped bring Victor down to be safe? Then we need to finish what we started. Root out the rest of his network. Show them that attacking us has consequences. Naomi listened to them argue and felt a strange detachment, like she was watching the scene from outside herself. She'd known this would get dangerous, had accepted that risk when she made her first call to Damien, but knowing intellectually that you might be in danger and actually being grabbed off the street were very different things. I need air, she said, standing abruptly. Damien was at her side immediately. I'll come with you. I'm just going to the backyard. You can watch from the window if you're that worried. The backyard was small, mostly concrete with a few struggling plants in pots. Naomi sat on the back steps and looked up at the city sky, hazy with light pollution. She could hear traffic from the street, voices from neighboring apartments. Normal sounds. The world going on like nothing had happened. The door opened behind her. Lillian, not Damien. Mind if I join you? Naomi shrugged, and Lillian sat beside her on the steps. When I first left Victor, I kept waiting for him to find me. Every car that drove past, every knock on the door, I was certain it was him coming to drag me back. Or worse. Lillian hugged her knees. It took me weeks to realize I was actually safe, that he couldn't touch me anymore, that the people protecting me were serious about keeping me alive.
How did you handle it? The fear? I didn't. Not really. I just kept moving forward because going back wasn't an option. And eventually the fear became background noise instead of the only thing I could hear. Lillian looked at her. You saved my life, you know. You and Damien and Detective Ward. If you hadn't shown me there was a way out, I'd still be in that house, still pretending everything was fine while he broke me down piece by piece. So whatever you're feeling right now, fear, anger, regret, just remember that you did something impossibly brave. And sometimes brave people get targeted because of it. But that's supposed to make me feel better? No, it's supposed to remind you why you started this in the first place. Because the system was broken and someone had to fix it, and you were willing to be that someone. They sat in silence for a while. Eventually, Damien came out, handed them both bottles of water. Ward's coordinating with her people. They're going to put extra patrols around your apartment. Watch for the sedan. He sat on the step below them. And I've got feelers out in the community. Someone will know who those men were. And when you find out, Naomi asked, then we have a conversation about boundaries and consequences. You mean you threaten them? I mean, I make it clear that attacking people under my protection is a mistake they won't get to make twice. Damien drank his water. I know you don't like the violent parts of what we do. I get that. But sometimes violence is the only language certain people understand. And right now, Victor's friends need to understand that we're not backing down. Naomi wanted to argue, wanted to say there had to be another way. But she thought about those hands grabbing her, that moment of pure terror when she realized she was being dragged toward a car and no one was coming to help. She thought about how it would have ended if Damien hadn't been there. Okay, she said quietly. Do what you have to do. Just try not to kill anyone. That's always the plan. By morning, Damien had a name, Michael Russo, enforcer for hire with connections to 3 of the lawyers in Victor's ledger. He'd been paid $5,000 to grab Naomi and deliver her to an abandoned warehouse in Red Hook, where someone, Damien's sources didn't know who, was waiting. Waiting to do what? Naomi asked. They were in the safe house kitchen, drinking coffee that tasted like it had been made yesterday. Ward had left hours ago to coordinate with her department. Lillian was asleep upstairs. Nothing good, probably interrogation. Find out what other evidence we have, who else is involved. Maybe kill you and make it look like an accident. Damien said it matter-of-factly, like he was discussing the weather. Russo's not the brains, he's just muscle, but he can lead us to whoever hired him. How? We ask nicely. Damien's version of asking nicely involved 3 of his people cornering Russo in a parking garage in Brooklyn Heights. Naomi wasn't there. Damien had insisted she stay at the safe house, but he called her afterward to report. Russo gave up his employer in about 5 minutes. Turns out threats of violence are much more effective when the person making them has a reputation for following through. There was satisfaction in Damien's voice. The man who hired him is named Gerald Moss. He's a defense attorney, was on Victor's payroll for years. Apparently he's worried that when the feds finish going through Victor's records, they're going to find evidence that Moss helped him threaten witnesses. So he decided to threaten new witnesses first. Sound logic. Criminals aren't usually known for their strategic thinking. Anyway, Moss is about to have a very bad day. I've already forwarded everything Russo told us to Ward. She'll handle the arrest. What about Russo? Russo is going to spend some time thinking about his life choices in a very uncomfortable location. When we're sure he's not going to try anything else, we'll let him go with a warning. A warning that sounds a lot like a threat. Semantics. Damien paused. You should be able to go home in a few days, once Moss is in custody and we're sure there aren't any other immediate threats. Think you can handle staying put until then? Naomi looked around the safe house living room. It was clean, functional, utterly impersonal. The kind of place you stayed when you were hiding from something. Do I have a choice? You always have a choice, but some choices are smarter than others. Then I guess I'm staying put. Gerald Moss was arrested that afternoon. Ward called to tell Naomi personally. He tried to run, made it about 3 blocks before my people caught him. Ward sounded tired but grimly satisfied. He's already asking for a deal, wants to give up everyone he knows in exchange for reduced charges. Will you give him one? Depends on what he has to offer, but Yeah, probably. We need to map out the full extent of Victor's network, and Moss can help with that. Ward's voice softened slightly.
How you holding up? I've been better. Damien says I can go home in a few days. Good. I'll make sure patrol keeps an eye on your building. And Naomi? I know this has been hard, scary. But you did the right thing. All of this, the arrests, the investigations, the cleanup, it's happening because you and Damien refused to accept that Victor was untouchable. That matters. After she hung up, Naomi sat with those words. It matters. She wanted to believe that. Wanted to believe that the fear and danger and constant looking over her shoulder were worth it. But right now, sitting in a safe house because someone had tried to kidnap her, it was hard to feel like anything mattered beyond survival. Lillian found her an hour later, still sitting in the same spot. You look how I felt 3 months ago. Like the weight of everything just hit you all at once. Is that normal? I think it's inevitable. You can only operate on adrenaline and righteous anger for so long before the reality sets in. And the reality is that we went to war with some very dangerous people, and wars have casualties. You think we made a mistake? No. Lillian sat across from her. I think we did something necessary and difficult, and the consequences are hard to live with. But the alternative, doing nothing, letting Victor and people like him keep destroying lives, that was worse. We chose the lesser evil. That doesn't make it easy, but it makes it right. You sound like Damien.
He's not wrong about everything, just about most things. Lillian smiled slightly. He called me earlier, said he's planning something and wanted to know if I'd be interested in helping. Planning what? Wouldn't say. But he mentioned something about making sure this doesn't happen again, that other women have somewhere to turn when the system fails them. Lillian leaned forward. I think he wants to build something more permanent than what we've been doing. Something organized, legal, or at least legal-ish.
Naomi considered that. For months, they'd been operating in the shadows, reactive rather than proactive, responding to crises as they happened. But what if they could create something that prevented the crises in the first place? Something that gave women options before their situations became desperate? Did he give you any details? Not yet. But he wants to meet. You, me, Ward. Talk about next steps. Lillian stood. I know you're tired. I know you probably want to go back to your normal life and forget any of this happened, but I don't think you will. I think you're like me. Once you've seen what's possible, once you know you can actually make a difference, you can't go back to pretending you don't know. She was right. Naomi knew she was right. Even now, exhausted and scared and sitting in a safe house with a bruised face, she couldn't imagine going back to just being a nurse, just documenting injuries and sending women back to their abusers. She'd crossed a line months ago, and there was no uncrossing it. Okay, Naomi said. I'll meet with him, hear what he has to say, but I'm not making any promises. That's all he'll ask for. 3 days later, Naomi went home. Damien's people swept her apartment first, checked for bugs or anything suspicious. They found nothing, but that didn't stop Naomi from jumping at every sound for the first few nights. The meeting happened the following week at Ward's apartment. The cat was still hostile, the coffee still terrible. Ward had cleared space on her table, covered it with papers and files, and what looked like the beginnings of a business plan. Okay, she said when everyone was settled. Here's the situation. We took down Victor. We're systematically dismantling his network. The city's talking about judicial reforms. Everything we worked for is actually happening. But in the process, we exposed a hole in the system that's bigger than any of us realized. There are thousands of women in this city who need help that the official channels can't or won't provide. And right now, we're the only ones filling that gap. So what are you proposing? Naomi asked. I'm proposing we make it official. Create an organization, a foundation maybe, that provides resources to domestic violence victims. Legal help, relocation assistance, safe housing, everything we've been doing in the shadows, but legitimate, above board. So people don't have to know a crime lord to get help. Damien smiled at that. I prefer the term independent contractor. You're a crime lord. Own it. Ward pulled out a folder. I've been talking to lawyers. We can set this up as a nonprofit. Get funding from grants, donations, maybe even government sources once we prove we can do the work. But we'll need people to run it. People who understand the problem and aren't afraid to bend rules when necessary.
You want us to run a domestic violence nonprofit. Naomi tried to wrap her head around it. Us, the people who've been operating illegally for months. Who better? You know what victims need because you've been helping them directly. You know how the system fails because you've been working around it. And you have connections, she looked pointedly at Damien, that can help in situations where legal options don't exist. Lillian was studying the papers on the table. This could actually work if we do it right. Keep the legitimate side legitimate, but maintain the ability to help people who fall through the cracks. That's the idea. Two parallel operations, one that's completely by the book, that gets us credibility and funding and official support, and one that remains quiet, that handles the cases we can't touch legally. Ward looked at each of them in turn. But I need to know you're all in, because this only works if we're unified, if we trust each other completely. Naomi thought about the past 6 months, the fear, the danger, the constant moral gymnastics of trying to do good through illegal means. She thought about Elise Harper, safe in New Jersey, about Sophie Monroe in community college, about Lillian Hale, free for the first time in 15 years, about the 43 women Damien had mentioned, all alive because someone had stepped in when the system failed. I'm in, she said, but I have conditions. No more kidnappings, no more threatening people unless it's absolutely necessary, and we make a genuine effort to work within the law whenever possible. Agreed, Damien said immediately. The goal was never to be criminals. It was to help people. If we can do that legally, we should. I want oversight, Lillian added. Someone outside our group who can review cases, make sure we're not crossing lines we shouldn't cross. Keep us honest. Ward nodded. I can arrange that. Someone from the DA's office who understands what we're trying to do. Maybe someone from victim services. Then I'm in too, Lillian said. They all looked at Damien. He'd been the one driving this from the beginning, the one who'd pulled them all into his orbit. Without him, none of this would exist. But he'd also been the most willing to operate in the gray areas, the one most comfortable with violence and threats. I built my life around protecting people the system ignored, he said quietly. If we can build something that does that work better, cleaner, without requiring everyone involved to become criminals, yeah, I'm in. Completely. Ward allowed herself a real smile. Then we're doing this. We're building something that actually helps people, something that lasts. Over the next month, they worked to make it real. Ward handled the legal paperwork, establishing the foundation as a legitimate nonprofit. Lillian used her connections, people who'd been horrified by Victor's crimes and wanted to help, to secure initial funding. Damien provided the seed money and found them office space in a building he owned in Brooklyn. And Naomi kept working at St. Catherine's because they needed someone on the ground who could identify women in crisis. They named it the Haven Black Foundation. Haven for the shelter it would provide. Black for the darkness they were trying to fight. It was a little dramatic, maybe a little obvious, but it felt right. The official opening happened in August, 3 months after Victor's conviction. They'd renovated 2 floors of the Brooklyn building into offices, consultation rooms, and temporary housing for women who needed immediate refuge. There was a legal clinic staffed by pro bono lawyers, a counseling center, a job placement program. All the services that should have existed all along but somehow never did. The media covered it extensively. The foundation that rose from the ashes of Brooklyn's biggest judicial corruption scandal. Ward gave interviews about the need for better victim services. Lillian spoke about her own experience and the importance of giving women options. Damien stayed out of the spotlight entirely, but his money and connections made everything possible. And Naomi stood in the newly renovated space, watching women arrive to get help, and felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. You did good, Damien said, appearing beside her with his usual silent approach. This is really going to help people. We all did good. This doesn't happen without everyone contributing. Maybe. But it started with you. That night in the ER when you called out Marcus. When you decided enough was enough. Everything else followed from that. He looked around the space. You changed things, Naomi. Changed me too, if I'm being honest. How? I've spent years punishing bad people, making them pay for their crimes. But this, helping victims, giving them resources, building something that lasts, this is better.
This actually prevents the harm instead of just responding to it afterward. Damien smiled. Turns out I'm better at building than destroying. Who knew? Before Naomi could respond, the door opened and a young woman walked in. Early 20s, bruises on her arms, poorly hidden by long sleeves. She looked around nervously, like she might bolt at any second. Naomi recognized that look, had seen it 100 times in her ER. She walked over, kept her voice gentle. Hi, welcome to Haven Black. How can we help you today? The woman's eyes filled with tears. I heard you help people. People who can't go to the police, who have nowhere else to turn. Is that true? It's true. You're safe here. Whatever you need, we'll figure it out together. Naomi guided her toward one of the consultation rooms. What's your name? Sarah. Sarah Chen. And just like that, the work continued. Sarah Chen's case turned out to be more complicated than most. Her boyfriend wasn't just abusive. He was a software engineer at a major tech company with enough money to hire lawyers who made Gerald Moss look like an amateur. He'd already filed a restraining order against her, claiming she was unstable and violent. Had documentation from a therapist he'd paid off. Had witnesses who'd swear she was the aggressor. It's a classic Darvo, Ward explained during their team meeting 3 days after Sarah walked through the door. Deny, attack, reverse, victim, and offender. He's painting himself as the real victim before she can even tell her story. Naomi looked at the file Ward had compiled. Screenshots of text messages where Sarah's boyfriend threatened her. Hospital records from 2 visits under a fake name. Photos Sarah had taken of her injuries, hidden on a cloud account he didn't know about. It was all there, but none of it would matter in court if his lawyers got to it first. So what do we do? Lillian asked. She'd taken on a bigger role at Haven Black over the past few months, handling intake and counseling while Naomi managed the day-to-day operations. We can't let him win, not after everything she's been through. We fight dirty, Damien said. He was leaning against the wall of the conference room, arms crossed. His lawyers think they're the only ones who know how to manipulate the system. We prove them wrong. Ward shook her head. We're supposed to be legitimate now, working within the law, remember? I said we'd try to work within the law. This situation requires something different. Damien pulled out his phone, scrolled through something. Sarah's boyfriend has been sloppy. Lots of digital communication, emails, texts, dating app messages to other women while he was with Sarah. We get a forensic tech person to pull all of that, present it as evidence of his character. Meanwhile, we find his therapist and make it clear that lying in court has consequences. That's still threatening people, Naomi pointed out. No, it's educating them about the legal ramifications of perjury. Completely different. Damien's smile was sharp. Look, we knew there would be cases that couldn't be handled purely through official channels. Sarah's is one of them. Her boyfriend has too much money, too many connections. If we play by the rules he's already rigged, we lose. And she loses. So we bend the rules just enough to level the field. Naomi hated that he was right. Hated that even with the foundation up and running, even with all their legitimate resources, sometimes the only way to win was to fight as dirty as the other side. But she thought about Sarah, hiding in the temporary housing upstairs because she was terrified her boyfriend would find her. Thought about the way Sarah flinched every time a door opened too fast. Okay, Naomi said. We do it, but carefully. And if there's any legal way to achieve the same result, we take it. Agreed. Damien was already making calls, coordinating with his tech people and investigators. Within 48 hours, they had everything they needed. Sarah's boyfriend, it turned out, had been running a catfish scheme on 3 different dating apps while simultaneously dating Sarah. Had promised each woman he was single, available, looking for something serious. The messages were damning, manipulative, controlling, escalating to verbal abuse when the women didn't respond fast enough. Not illegal exactly, but definitely evidence of a pattern. The therapist was easier. One conversation with Ward, one reminder about the penalties for perjury and professional ethics violations, and suddenly he was recanting his assessment. Turned out he'd only met Sarah's boyfriend twice, hardly enough for a legitimate diagnosis. He'd be happy to revise his report. The restraining order hearing happened 2 weeks later. Sarah's boyfriend showed up with 2 lawyers and the kind of confidence that came from never having faced real consequences. He testified smoothly, painting Sarah as unstable and dangerous. said he feared for his safety. Then Ward took the stand as a witness, presented the dating app messages, the revised therapist report, hospital records showing a pattern of injuries consistent with abuse, and finally, testimony from two of the other women he'd been seeing who'd come forward after Ward tracked them down. The judge, a woman in her 60s who'd been on the bench for 20 years and had probably seen every manipulation tactic in the book, denied the restraining order against Sarah and granted one in her favor instead. Sarah's boyfriend left the courthouse looking like he'd been hit by a truck. "We won," Sarah said afterward, tears streaming down her face. "I can't believe we actually won." "You won," Naomi corrected. "You were brave enough to ask for help, to tell the truth. We just made sure people listened." But it didn't end there. 3 days later, Damien called with news. Sarah's boyfriend violated the restraining order, showed up at her work, tried to force her into his car. Security stopped him. Cops arrested him. There was satisfaction in Damien's voice. "He's in custody. Bail hearing tomorrow." Will they keep him locked up? Ward's pushing for it. And with the violation on top of everything else, there's a good chance. But Naomi... Damien paused. "This is going to keep happening. We're going to keep running into cases where the system almost fails, where we have to push and bend and sometimes break the rules to make sure justice actually happens. You okay with that?" Naomi thought about it. Really thought about it. They'd built Haven Black to be legitimate, to work within the system. But the system was still broken in fundamental ways, still biased toward people with money and power, still failed victims more often than it helped them. "I'm okay with it as long as we're honest about what we're doing, as long as we don't pretend we're purely altruistic heroes. We're doing necessary work, but we're not saints." She heard Damien's soft laugh. "What?" "Nothing, just you've come a long way from the nurse who was terrified to make one phone call. Now you're comfortable with moral ambiguity." "I'm not comfortable with it. I've just accepted it's necessary. There's a difference." "Fair enough." Sarah's boyfriend got 6 months for violating the restraining order. Sarah got a job through Haven Black's employment program, moved into an apartment in a different borough, started therapy. 6 months after walking into the foundation terrified and alone, she walked back in to volunteer. "I want to help other women the way you helped me," she told Naomi. "I want to be the person who tells them it gets better, that they can escape, that there are people who will fight for them." It became a pattern. Women they helped came back to help others. The foundation grew not just in size but in capability. They hired more counselors, more lawyers, expanded the temporary housing, created job training programs and financial literacy classes. Everything that might give a woman the tools to rebuild her life after escaping abuse. And quietly, in parallel, Damien's network continued to operate, handling the cases that couldn't be resolved legally. The abusers who were too connected to touch through official channels. The situations where the only option was to make someone disappear or face consequences outside the courtroom. Naomi tried not to think too hard about that side of things. Tried to focus on the legitimate work, the women they were helping through legal means. But she couldn't pretend it didn't exist. Couldn't pretend that sometimes the only reason they succeeded was because Damien was willing to do things she wouldn't. It was an uneasy balance, but it worked. A year after the foundation opened, they held an anniversary event. Media coverage, speeches from victims they'd helped, donations from supporters who believed in their work. The mayor showed up, the police commissioner, even a few judges who wanted to be seen supporting domestic violence prevention. Naomi stood on the stage and looked out at the crowd. She saw Sarah Chen talking to another young woman who looked terrified but hopeful. Saw Elise Harper, who traveled from New Jersey just for this event. Saw dozens of faces she recognized from intake meetings and counseling sessions and emergency calls in the middle of the night. "A year ago, Haven Black didn't exist," Naomi said into the microphone. Her voice shook slightly, but she pushed through. "A year ago, these women had nowhere to turn. The system had failed them. Their communities had failed them. They were alone and scared and certain there was no way out. But today, because of this foundation and everyone who supports it, they have options, they have resources, they have hope." The applause was loud, genuine. Naomi stepped back and let Lillian take over, talking about the expansion plans and new programs they were developing. Ward spoke next about the importance of collaboration between law enforcement and victim services. Everything was polished, professional, exactly what a legitimate nonprofit should look like. Damien, predictably, was nowhere to be seen. He'd funded the event, coordinated security, made sure everything ran smoothly. But he stayed in the shadows where he belonged, letting others take the credit for work he'd made possible. After the event, Naomi found him on the roof of the building, looking out over Brooklyn. "You should have been up there. This is as much your achievement as anyone's." "No, this is yours and Ward's and Lillian's. I just provided resources." Damien turned to face her. "Besides, my presence would raise questions. People would start digging into who I am, what I do. Better for everyone if I stay invisible." "You're not invisible. Everyone who works here knows who you are, what you've done. That's different. They know because they need to know. The public doesn't need to know that a crime lord helped start Brooklyn's most successful domestic violence nonprofit. That would undermine everything we've built." Naomi leaned against the railing beside him. "Are you still a crime lord after everything that's changed?" Damien considered the question. "I still have my network, still handle situations that require extra-legal solutions. But I'm more selective now. More focused on cases where we can actually help people instead of just punishing bad actors. So maybe I'm evolving, becoming something different. A crime lord with a conscience. Something like that." He smiled. "You know what the best part of all this is? It's sustainable. We don't have to keep operating like we're at war because we built something that can handle most situations legally. The shadow work is becoming the exception instead of the rule. That was always the goal." "Was it?" "Because for a while there, it felt like the goal was just burning down everything corrupt. That was the beginning. But you can't build anything permanent on ashes. You need a foundation, structure, legitimacy. We have that now. Everything else is just cleanup." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city lights come on as evening fell. Somewhere down there, a woman was being hurt. Another was planning her escape. Another was walking into a police station or a shelter, or maybe, if she was lucky, into Haven Black. The cycle of violence continued because it always continued. But now there were more people fighting back, more resources, more hope. The real test came 3 months later when Lillian got a call that changed everything. "It's Victor," she said, bursting into Naomi's office. Her face was pale. "He's dying, pancreatic cancer stage 4. His lawyer wants me to visit him in prison, says he's asking for me." Naomi set down her pen. "You don't have to go. You don't owe him anything." "I know, but—" Lillian sat down heavily. "Part of me needs to see him, to look him in the eye one last time and know that he can't hurt me anymore, that I won, that I survived him." "And the other part?" "The other part is terrified that seeing him will undo all the healing I've done, that I'll walk into that prison and turn back into the scared woman who couldn't leave." "You won't. You're not that woman anymore. You haven't been for a long time." Naomi came around the desk, sat beside her. "But if you want to go, you don't have to go alone. I'll come with you. Ward will come. Damien will probably insist on coming, even though he definitely shouldn't be anywhere near a prison." Lillian laughed wetly. "Yeah, that seems like a bad idea." They settled on Naomi and Ward. 2 days later, they made the drive to the federal correctional facility where Victor was being held. The prison was gray and institutional, exactly what Naomi expected. They went through security, surrendered their phones, followed a guard through multiple locked doors to the medical wing. Victor Hale looked nothing like the imposing judge who terrorized Brooklyn's courts. Cancer had stripped away at least 40 pounds. His skin was yellow, his eyes sunken. He was shackled to the hospital bed, even though he clearly wasn't capable of harming anyone. He looked up when they entered, and something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, maybe regret, though Naomi doubted it. "Lillian, you came." "I came." Lillian's voice was steady. She stood at the foot of the bed, made no move to get closer. "What do you want, Victor?" "To apologize. To explain, to—" He coughed, a wet, rattling sound. "To make amends before I die. You can't make amends for what you did. Not to me. Not to all the people you hurt from the bench. Not in whatever time you have left." Lillian's hands were shaking, but her voice stayed strong. "But I'll listen. Say what you need to say." Victor talked for 20 minutes. About his childhood, his father's expectations, the pressure to be perfect. About how the power corrupted him gradually. how it became easier to take bribes than stand up to the powerful men offering them, about how he'd convinced himself that Lillian deserved the violence, that she was the problem, not him. It was a masterclass in self-justification dressed up as confession. Naomi watched Lillian's face harden as Victor spoke, watched her realize that even dying, even facing the end of everything, Victor Hale couldn't actually take responsibility for his actions. When he finally stopped talking, Lillian was quiet for a long moment. "You know what's funny?" she said finally. "I spent 15 years believing you were this unstoppable force, this powerful man who controlled everything and everyone. But you were just a coward, a small, scared man who hurt people to feel big. And now you're dying alone in a prison hospital, and I get to walk out of here and live the life I built without you." She leaned forward slightly. "I forgive you, Victor. Not because you deserve it, not because you've earned it, but because carrying hatred for you was poisoning me, and I'm done being poisoned by anything you did. You don't get to take up space in my head anymore." She turned and walked out without waiting for his response. Ward and Naomi followed. In the parking lot, Lillian broke down, sobbed against Naomi's shoulder while Ward stood guard, making sure no one bothered them. It took 10 minutes for her to compose herself enough to speak. "I thought seeing him would give me closure, but he's the same person he always was. Even dying, even after losing everything, he can't admit he was wrong, can't accept responsibility." "Some people can't," Ward said gently. "Their egos won't let them. But you gave yourself closure anyway. You looked him in the eye and told him the truth, that he doesn't matter anymore, that you survived him. That's more than most victims ever get to do." "She's right," Naomi added. "You won, Lillian, completely. And he knows it." Victor Hale died 6 weeks later. The news made minor headlines. Disgraced judge dies in prison, corruption scandal remembered, victims speak out about justice finally being served. Lillian didn't attend the funeral, didn't acknowledge his death publicly at all. She just kept working at Haven Black, kept helping other women escape their own versions of Victor. The foundation continued to grow. By year 2, they'd helped over 300 women. By year 3, that number doubled. They opened a second location in Queens, started talking about expansion to other boroughs. The model worked. The combination of legitimate services and quietly effective shadow operations meant they could handle almost any situation. Naomi eventually left her position at St. Catherine's to work at Haven Black full-time. It was the right choice, even though she missed the ER sometimes. Missed the immediate satisfaction of fixing someone's broken bone or stopping their bleeding. But this work, helping women rebuild entire lives, was more meaningful in the long run. Ward got promoted to lieutenant, which gave her more resources and more ability to coordinate with Haven Black officially. She became the Foundation's liaison with law enforcement, the person who made sure they stayed on the right side of most lines while knowing when to look the other way. And Damien gradually transformed from crime lord to philanthropist. It happened so slowly that Naomi almost didn't notice, but one day she realized he hadn't threatened anyone in months, hadn't needed to. The reputation he'd built, combined with the legitimate power of the Foundation, was enough to make most abusers think twice. "You've gone soft," she teased him one afternoon in the Foundation office. "I prefer strategically evolved. Sounds better on a resume." Damien was reviewing financial reports, making sure their funding remained stable. "But yeah, maybe I have. Turns out building things is more satisfying than tearing them down. Who knew?" "I knew. I told you that 2 years ago." "You did? I should listen to you more often." He set down the reports. "We're doing good work here, Naomi. Real, lasting good. The kind that changes systems instead of just responding to failures. I'm proud of that. Proud of us." "Me too." The real measure of their success came in small moments. Sarah Chen graduating from paralegal school and joining Haven Black's legal team. Elise Harper sending photos of her new apartment in New Jersey, thriving in a life free from violence. Anonymous donations from women they'd helped, passing forward the support they'd received. And then there were the women who never made headlines. The ones whose stories would never be told publicly, but who walked into Haven Black terrified and walked out with hope. Those were the victories that mattered most. 5 years after that first night in the ER, Naomi sat in her office at Haven Black and answered the phone. "This is Naomi Vale. Hi, I heard you help people who don't know where else to turn." The voice was young,
scared, familiar in its fear. My name is Rachel. My boyfriend, he hurt me, and I'm afraid he's going to do it again. Can you help? Naomi pulled up a blank intake form. Reached for her pen. Yes, we can absolutely help. Tell me what's going on. As Rachel talked, Naomi typed notes and thought about everything that had led to this moment. A drunk boyfriend in an ER, a decision to speak up instead of staying silent, a phone call to a dangerous stranger, months of operating in the shadows before building something legitimate and lasting. It hadn't been clean, hadn't been easy. They'd broken laws, bent rules, done things that would have gotten them arrested if anyone in power had decided to look too closely. But they'd also saved lives, hundreds of them, and they'd built something that would keep saving lives long after they were gone. Okay, Rachel, Naomi said when the woman finished talking. Here's what we're going to do. First, we get you somewhere safe. I have a room available in our temporary housing. Can you get to our office in Brooklyn? I think so. He's at work right now. I could leave. Good. Pack a bag. Just essentials. Don't bring anything traceable. And Rachel, you're going to be okay. I promise. We've helped hundreds of women in your situation, and we're going to help you too. After she hung up, Naomi called Damien. We have a new intake. Domestic violence, immediate threat. I'm putting her in temporary housing tonight. What do you need? Just security. Make sure her boyfriend doesn't track her here, and maybe, Naomi hesitated, maybe check into him, see if there's anything we can use if she decides to press charges. Already on it, I'll have a full profile by tonight. This was the work now. The rhythm they'd established. Legitimate help first, shadow operations as needed, clean solutions when possible, dirty ones when necessary. It wasn't perfect, wasn't pure, but it was effective, and in the end, that was what mattered. That evening, Rachel arrived at Haven Black with a backpack and terror in her eyes. Naomi met her at the door, walked her through intake, got her settled in temporary housing, explained the resources available, counseling, legal help, job placement, relocation assistance if needed, everything that might help Rachel build a new life. Why are you doing this? Rachel asked at one point. Why do you care about some random woman you've never met? Naomi thought about Elise Harper, about Sophie Monroe and Sarah Chen and Lillian Hale and all the others, about the nurse she'd been 5 years ago, documenting injuries and sending women back into hell because that was the protocol. Because someone has to, she said simply. Because the system fails people like you every day, and we decided that wasn't acceptable. So we built something better. Will I really be okay? Can I really escape him? Yes. It won't be easy. There will be hard days and setbacks and moments when you want to give up, but you'll have support, resources, people who understand what you're going through because they've been there too. Naomi squeezed Rachel's hand. You're not alone anymore. That's the most important thing to remember. Whatever happens next, you don't have to face it alone. Rachel started crying then, the kind of tears that came from years of fear finally releasing. Naomi sat with her until she calmed down, until exhaustion took over and Rachel fell asleep on the couch in her new temporary home. Walking out of the building later, Naomi found Damien waiting by his car. How's she doing? Scared, hopeful. Same as they all are at the beginning. Naomi leaned against the car beside him. Her boyfriend has priors. 2 arrests for assault, both charges dropped when the victims refused to testify. Classic pattern. Want me to handle it? Not yet. Let's see if Rachel wants to press charges. Give the system a chance to work first. Naomi smiled slightly. We're legitimate now, remember? We try the legal route before resorting to threats. Look at you, all grown up and procedural. Damien's tone was teasing. What happened to the nurse who broke protocol to call out an abuser in front of everyone? She learned that sometimes you need both approaches, the public fight and the private one, the legal pressure and the illegal backup. You taught me that. I taught you a lot of things, most of them probably illegal. Yeah, well, I'm a surprisingly good student. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the Brooklyn street life flow past. Somewhere in the city, another woman was being hurt. Another was planning her escape. Another was gathering courage to ask for help. The cycle continued because violence was older than civilization and harder to kill than cockroaches. But now there were people fighting back with resources and strategy,
and a refusal to accept that evil should win just because it was powerful. There were women like Lillian who transformed from victims to advocates, women like Sarah who'd found strength they didn't know they had, women like Rachel who were taking their first steps toward freedom. And there was Haven Black standing as proof that the system could be changed if you were willing to work within it and around it and occasionally against it. That justice was possible even when the law failed. That hope existed even in the darkest situations. Naomi's phone buzzed. Another call. Another woman needing help. She answered it without hesitation, already pulling up a new intake form in her mind. "This is Naomi Vale. How can I help you?" The work continued. It would always continue. But now when women called asking if there was hope, Naomi could say yes with absolute certainty. Because she'd helped build that hope with her own hands, brick by brick, woman by woman, until it became something real and lasting and impossible to destroy. That was enough. More than enough. It was everything. It was